What's up guys, this is Alina. As always, I hope you're enjoying the content on my platform and that you find it informative and it adds value to your overall wellness goals and day-to-day lifestyle. So let's dive into today's topic. One of the biggest questions that I encounter is how can I figure out my own macros? So everybody's always curious about that. Although there are countless macro calculators available online, I could tell you with utmost certainty that majority are very, very inaccurate. But honestly, it's not their fault, right? So the reason they can't provide you accurate results is because they know very, very little information about you. So when it comes to figuring out macros, yes, age, height, current body weight, goal body weight, all of that stuff does matter. But the data that they provide a very small picture into who you are, what your lifestyle entails, how long you've been dieting, what your hormonal balance is actually like, what your actual current body composition is like, and so on. So what I mean by this is that macronutrients, like nutrition overall, is very much a science of its own on a per individual basis. At least that's what I like to say. So that means that what works for you will likely not work for your friends, your siblings, or the guy or girl that you sit next to at work. So with that being said, here are a few steps to start figuring out your own macronutrient ranges. So let's start off with protein. It's essential to factor in current body composition, goal body composition, and honestly, how much strength training are you actually doing? For someone who's fairly overweight and has, let's say, 20 to 25 or 30 more pounds to lose, if you're working out, let's say 3 to 5 times a week, focusing on a good amount of strength and circuit training, I would suggest starting somewhere around 0.7 to 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. If you're someone who's looking to lose less than 15 pounds and you are incorporating strength training as well, I would suggest aiming closer to 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound. If you're someone who's looking to focus on recomposition, so essentially dropping some body fat, adding lean muscle, or looking to actually bulk, I would aim for 1 to 1.2, maybe 1.3 grams of protein per pound. And again, this is depending on how much activity and strength work you're actually incorporating. Let's move on to carbs. Carb intake should be based on a lot of different factors. So the guide here is not comprehensive, but instead focusing on your actual starting point based on body composition and daily activity alone. For someone who's fairly overweight and has, again, 20, 25, 30 more pounds to lose, 30 or more, and if you're working out 3 to 5 times a week, focusing on a good amount of strength and circuit training, I would suggest starting somewhere in the realm of 75 to 125 grams of carbs. This should, of course, vary if you have issues with insulin or carb sensitivity, if you focus on a very carb and calorie restrictive diet for a long time, or if you're just super sedentary amongst other things. If you're looking to lose less than 15 pounds and you're fairly active, focusing on a good amount of training and other activity, I would suggest starting around 150 to 200 grams of carbs. And again, this is all depending on your overall size and body composition. Now, if you're someone who's looking to focus on recomposition, dropping a bit of body fat and adding some lean muscle, or looking to bulk, I would start at 200 grams of carbs or higher, again, depending on what you've been doing, and work up incrementally week over week, depending on how your body responds. Scaling up consistently will get you much better results than trying to stay at the same intake indefinitely. So that's something to always focus on, especially if you want to optimize your metabolic rate. Let's move on to fats. So fat intake should vary in correlation with everything I mentioned above regarding body composition, activity levels, and so on. So essentially, think of, for most people at least, unless you're naturally an ectomorph or someone who's a very hard gainer, to keep somewhat of an inverse relationship between carb and fat intake. So basically, the higher your carb intake, the lower you want to taper down on your fats. Obviously, always within a healthy range, of course. And vice versa, the lower your carb intake, the higher you want to increase fats in order to make sure that you're not at too large of a deficit. For the main groups above that I mentioned, if carb intake is 75 to 125 grams, aim for fats somewhere in the range of 105 to 115 grams, or somewhere in there. If carb intake is 150 to 200 grams, aim for fats in the 90 to 95 gram range. And if carb intake is above 200 grams, aim for somewhere around 70 to 80, 85 grams of fats, again, depending on your goals and activity level, and so on. Remember that these are rough estimates and ranges without me knowing all of the ins and outs of you specifically, but they should help you get the ball rolling if you aren't too familiar with macros in general and how to set up your own breakdown. So I hope you guys found this informative, and if you have any more in-depth questions, please don't hesitate to message me directly.